Executives in Transition. The objectives and expectations is as follows. Essentially, COO Executives in Transition is designed to support the Chief Operating Officer in these uncertain and challenging business times. We're getting COO in Transitions on your way to your next great opportunity. Open to COO Forum members, as well as any Chief Operating Officer or second in command executive pro bono with absolutely no fees or obligations. The initiative aligns with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, Inc., COO Forum core values and is expressly intended for all Chief Operating Officers and second in command executives. This is the 4th month, and we will continue with the weekly programs into 2021. We're looking at some new initiatives, and you'll be hearing about that over the month of January. Our guidelines are pretty straightforward. Essentially, meeting courtesy, let's keep the mute on until if you're not speaking, that's helpful. Business first, you can be relaxed, go away, go to the bathroom, do anything, go get your coffee. This is a casual, relaxed format. Business language and no politics, it just works better. Meeting records, recording, I'm sorry, is we're going to record this and we're putting it into the Mighty Networks where we've done it every single one. And you have an opportunity, if you're in the Mighty Network, to take a look at anything you see up and down from all the different ones we've had since September. Let's keep your job prospect confidential. If you're close to getting something, don't get the word out on it. I think it's very important for us to understand that if you're working a particular prospect, you want to be working that alone. And then we're good. We have chat and any Q&A you have, just reach out and get that done. I'm going to introduce Laura Weichel and Fiona Murray. Laura Weichel is the COO Forum's second in command for 13 years and is our executive vice president. Based in Greater Atlanta, she is responsible for leading many and various activities of the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, COO Forum organization, and leadership overseeing all chapters, chapter directors, and members. She's a wonderful, upbeat, visionary colleague who creates extraordinary outcomes and successes. Fiona Murray is at the point for the COO Executives in Transition, is a relatively new member, but at the same time as a member services director, she is just really supporting us well. And in these times, we can use that support because we are involved in lots of different things with the Chief Operating Officer business. With that, I want to throw it to Laura.
Mm-hmm. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. We have a great group, and I'm super excited to welcome Marcia Ballinger with us today. I'm going to give a little background on Marcia. She is a co-founder and principal at Ballinger Leaf Lab, a St. Paul-based executive search firm. She conducts executive search projects, recruiting top executives for nonprofits, and she has extensive prior background in corporate search. Marcia has a BS in Business Administration and an MA in Speech Communication, along with a PhD in Organization and Management from Capella University, where she later served as chair of the board of directors. She's currently a board member of 2 people-oriented companies and 2 nonprofit organizations. Marcia was named one of the Real Power 50 by Minnesota Business in 2014, a top woman in business by the Minnesota St. Paul Business Journal in 2008, and a Luminary Award winner by the National Association of Women Business Owners in 2006. She was recognized in the inaugural group of 50 over 50 named by AARP in 2016. She's a resident of St. Paul. She and her husband, Brad, have 1 adult daughter and a pug mix named Reuben. She's the author of the 20-Minute Networking Meeting and Winning the Executive Interview. She's at work on her 3rd book, providing information and pathways for business executives who wish to transition to the nonprofit sector. And with that, I would like to welcome Marcia, and I will turn it over to her and stop my share. And just remind everybody, the chat is wide open to ask any questions, and she will be monitoring it throughout the presentation. And if you can mute, if you're not speaking, that would be awesome as well. It's yours, Marcia.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Great to see so many faces. Laura was remarking earlier with Bill and Fiona about the small Brady Bunch pictures and how refreshing it is to see everybody, and it truly is. Thank you. We're here this morning to talk about networking mistakes. And goodness knows we've all seen a lot of them, but I've spent a number of years sort of curating what happens in networking into bunches that I think we can learn from today. And the first mistake that I find with networking is rather universal, and that is not valuing networking for the importance that it plays in your job search. And I'm not a gambling person, but if I was, and if I was in Las Vegas, let's just say, and there I had the choice between door A, door B, and door C, and behind that door is $1 million prize, which you're all $1 million employees, so let's pick that. 3 doors, 3 choices, $1 million prize, and I've got about a 10% chance behind door A. I've got a 10% chance behind door B, and I've got an 80% chance behind door C. Again, I'm not a gambler and I'm not the most brightest bulb on the tree, but I would pick door C, and so would all of us, right? It's a simplistic example, but statistic after statistic, outplacement tracking of how people get jobs across the country is always hovering around and above 80%. A smidge different for certain job families or job levels. You might be significantly higher than 85%. It's certainly at the professional and executive level been as high as 90% at various times. That's the likelihood that you are going to get your next job through your network versus door A through search firms like me, or other recruiting type of support services, or B, through looking online and surfing the web and applying for things that you see on the internet. 10%, 10%, roughly 80%. So mistake number one, again, not too bright and not a gambler, but I would be spending 80% of my time, 80% of my energy on networking. So it's important, and it's a mistake not to see it for how important it is to you in your career. Well, why did I get interested in networking? I got interested in networking because in the field of executive search, we are a frequent target for networking requests. And maybe you've contacted search firms as part of your transition. That happens a lot, daily, I might add. And I'm always the person, no matter what firm I'm with, that says, yeah, go ahead and send me the people in transition. I'll take the calls. Well, many years ago, I realized that I had hit the 1,000 networking mark, and I've certainly reached a few thousand by now. And when I thought back on those networking meetings, I realized that only a small percentage probably achieved the objective of the person who met with me. Only a small percentage of people, when they left, was I excited to forward their resume? Was I excited to mention them to someone else? Would I sort of proactively do something to forward or advance their career? And then I started thinking about what those people did in that small percentage did it right, who when they left my office, I was running to my laptop to forward it to a board of directors to say, hey, here's somebody sharp that works in your trade. You may have an interest in their candidacy. Or a month later, I'm at an event and someone says, hey, we have an opening. I met someone sharp. What did the people for whom I had that reaction? And when I started watching and following and tracking, and then I started testing it with people that also, like me, get a lot of working meetings, and tested to see if this were how it happened, how would that be for you? Anyway, that all turned into a book that I called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, where I outline what works in executive networking. And again, the book is about what to do right, but today we're talking about some of the common themes that come up that we want to avoid. I think the second mistake that I would say right from the get-go is what I call bungling the meeting request. Some way, shape, or form, we need to ask for the networking meeting. And so good for you if you're at a place where you're making the request, you're over the hump of standing back and not making the networking request, but we want to do that right. Today, most of our networking requests come through email messages. And a networking request should probably have a couple of elements to it in order to increase the odds that it is successful. Successful being, yes, I'll take the meeting. So in the subject line, if you have been referred by Olive DeVries, say, networking request referred to you by Olive DeVries, so that you make the connection right in the subject line and you're clear about your intent. In the email message, I'm Marcia Ballinger. I was referred to you by your former colleague, Olive. Olive suggested that the two of us might meet as I'm in a transition at this time, and she thought you would have great ideas for me in the field of environmental science. If there was a positive comment that your contact made about Olive, you might say, my friend John mentioned how much he enjoyed working with you over the years. The two of you had great rapport and won Team of the Year 5 times, I understand. So you mentioned something positive to that person from the referral source. I would like 20 minutes of your time. How happy do you think the other person is going to be to see that you only want 20 minutes of their time? Always mention, I'll manage a 20-minute meeting, number one. Number two, at your convenience, at a date of your choosing anytime over the next several weeks. I can promise you that yet this week, I will get a networking meeting where somebody says to me, I'd like to meet with you. I'd like at least an hour. And what are you doing Thursday or Friday of this week? I can tell you for a fact, I never take those meetings. Never, ever, ever do I take a meeting where there is utter disregard for the schedule and priorities of the other person. There's almost nothing that a person can say about how great their leadership skills are and how great and sensitive their communication skills are when they start out with all of that. So we don't have to say that. We're going to show it by our actions. We're going to request a short meeting. We're going to request it for a specific purpose. We're going to do it at the time of their choosing, when we're back in offices, at the place of their choosing, most likely their office. I can promise you yet this week, if we were live, someone would send me a message and say, I live in the West Metro, 30 miles away. Would you please drive toward me and meet at a cafe that's convenient to my location? I never take those meetings. We're not going to do that. We're going to meet at the time of their choice, the location of their choice, at a date to be determined by them. That's convenient. In addition, you have attached a copy of your resume for their review, or a bio, or a one-pager. So you're helping them be prepared for the meeting. Thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful. I look forward to our conversation, and you press send. Are you going to hit 100%? Networking is not 100% activity, but you've upped your chances that the person will say yes. So we won't bungle a networking meeting. All right, the person says yes, and you've got a networking meeting set up, which is awesome. A networking mistake is taking too much time. And I've already mentioned that an hour is way too much time. When you stop and think about it, what's your objective for this meeting? Your objective for this meeting is to learn a few things from this person, some targeted topics that you might want to address with that person, a couple of specific questions that you're going to ask that person. possibly and hopefully you'll gain another connection or two to add to your network. And thirdly, you're going to do that in such a way that makes the person want to refer you. Those three things are your objective. Now, if you were back at the office and you had a colleague that you needed to ask them a few questions, ask them who else they knew or another resource, and do it in a positive way, how long would you allow yourself for that meeting? 20 minutes at the most. It's a 20-minute objective. We're going to set a 20-minute meeting. Now, I do realize that 20 minutes is a provocatively short number. And in some ways I selected it for that, but certainly it takes no more than 25 minutes to accomplish what you need to accomplish in a networking meeting. It is not meant to be the only time you'll ever talk to that person. It's not meant to be exhaustive or to exhaust the other person. It's not a plop in the chair and let's take all morning. It's a very specific, well-planned discussion in which you display how well organized, how thoughtful, and how gracious you are. Which leads me to another mistake, and that is not being a pro in running a meeting. This meeting, this important, critical networking meeting. And I don't need to tell you the sort of rule of law of meetings in corporate America. You know this intuitively, but sometimes we forget when we're networking. You called the meeting, you run the meeting. In a million years, you would never set up a meeting with one of your colleagues, walk down the hall, plop into their office, plop in the chair, and wait for them to run your meeting. You would not do that. And let me tell you, in networking, it happens all the time. People come in ill-prepared, plop down and look across the desk and look for me to run their meeting. So we are going to be a pro in running this meeting, just as pro as you are in running any other meeting that you might have. And essentially, that was the core of the 20-minute networking meeting, is what I found chunked out minute by minute by minute by minute works the absolute best in accomplishing your networking objective.
No.
Okay, it was yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm taking my 20 minutes and spending them accordingly, so to speak, I'm going to do a couple of things and I'm going to do them well and on a timely basis. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the meeting and create a really, really positive first impression. My first impression includes a couple of things, and they're really important. Number one, reiterating the original connection. It may have been 3 weeks, 4 weeks since I set up this meeting. And if I was referred to you by Jeff Casper, I'm going to come to the meeting and what I'm going to say is, oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to Jeff for the connection. I just had a Zoom call with him last week and he sends his greetings. He was laughing about the time that the two of you went on a sales meeting together and missed the boat back to the island. And oh my goodness, it sounds like you really had an amazing team. Jeff is really a terrific contact. And again, I'm grateful for his referral. So I often forget who the referral is. Weeks have passed. You've reminded me, and you continue to elevate my relationship with the person that we have in common. See networking as way, way more than getting a job. It's elevating your brand. It's displaying yourself as a connected, gracious executive in the same space as this executive. So I'm upholding and enhancing the relationship of these two peers. So the first thing I do is I say thank you, I reiterate the relationship, and I set the agenda for our meeting. You don't have to say much more than, hey, I'd love to tell you a little bit about myself, ask a couple of things, and then I'll be on my way. It can be that simple, but that's your agenda. No amount of talking about how well organized you are makes up for displaying and living being organized. And being organized is knowing why you're there and having an agenda, really crisp. In the 20 minutes, that whole piece takes under 2 minutes. The next thing that you want to do is talk about yourself. Now, keep in mind, you've already sent your resume, you've sent your one-pager. If you sent a confirmation or a reminder the day before, perhaps you resent that paperwork, you might have it with you. The amount of time in the 20 minutes that I allow for you to talk about yourself, many of you, if you're introverts, will be happy to hear this, no more than 1 minute. And as a matter of fact, the only reason that it's 1 minute is because I round it up. About 30 seconds is all you need to talk about yourself. Takes a big weight off of our shoulders if we've felt that A, I have to be there for an hour, and 2, I got to fill the hour talking about myself and being pithy and interesting. And, you know, trust me, we run out of attention for that in about 15 seconds because we have your resume. And you're not there to talk about yourself. You're there to gain wisdom from the person you're meeting with. 1 minute, tops, 30 seconds, probably. To say, thank you so much again, Fiona. What a pleasure. As you saw, I was most recently the Chief Financial Officer at Augsburg University, a private institution here in the region. And I'm seeking a new opportunity after 20 years in higher education, finance, and accounting. I'm open to other sectors, and the purpose of my wishing to speak with you is that you've made some transitions with your financial careers into other sectors, and I'm particularly interested in that. Avocationally, I serve on a number of boards, particularly those that work in the animal welfare area, and I've got a passion for that type of work as well. How long did that take? I'm guessing that was probably 15 to 18 seconds, maybe less. And that's really all you need, in addition to the paperwork that you've already sent, to put context to the meeting. Not knowing your 1 minute narrative is a networking mistake. Taking more than a minute is a networking mistake. I don't love the idea of anything, particularly in interviews, but I think in networking meetings too, being planned or practiced or canned or rehearsed. But I do like the idea of being confident that your personal narrative is under a minute, and that might require timing yourself or practicing with folks that you know. Tease out a summary about yourself that would be helpful to provide context to this person. And again, after all, you're there seeking wisdom, not selling. This is not a job interview. So knowing your narrative is a critical piece. Not knowing your narrative is a mistake. The sixth mistake that I see very frequently is not doing your homework about that individual. So we say that we're going to spend the vast majority of our time on networking, that 80% of our time. Not all of that 80% is in meetings and in dialogue with others. Some of it is in setting up the meeting and confirming the meeting. And some of it is in preparing for the meeting. So how do I do that? You might know something about this individual from the person who referred you. You certainly minimally will look them up on LinkedIn. You will possibly look them up on their company website if you think that they'll have a presence. You'll certainly Google them to see where else they show up on boards or committees or other sorts of civic activities. And as a matter of fact, you might find more areas of commonality than just the person who referred them to you. So that when you, maybe from the time that you asked for the meeting, you say, Mickle Smith has referred me and thank you. And I understand from Mickle that the two of you worked together and you were Mickle's boss. He said you were the best boss he ever had, etc. So I made that. Now 3 weeks go by and I'm having the networking meeting. If I've done my homework, I may also see that that individual and I are both involved in youth soccer coaching. Should I mention that? Why, yes, I should. Maybe if I've discovered that, I might mention that in my confirmation email. I may have even more to connect me to that person when I show up for the meeting. And more is better. Networking is a human activity. So someone just asked a question that's rather germane to where we're at right now. What suggestions do we have when we're networking and we don't have a contact? That happens. You know, it certainly is helpful if I have a personal contact. That's terrific. But maybe I found a name of someone rather than was given a name of someone. All the more important to do my homework, right? Because maybe I discover that we're both attended the same college. Maybe we both live in the same vicinity. Maybe we belong to similar trade associations or something like that. So do double duty on your homework when you're reaching out to someone that you don't know. Find whatever you can that might connect you to that person and use whatever you have. There have been times where I have had literally nothing in common with someone, seemingly, and I know on some networking I've said, as a fellow woman in business, you know, that wasn't much, but it was the best I had. Sometimes on LinkedIn, I'll say, we share 43 connections. And maybe I don't know any of those very well, and I don't know which of theirs they know terribly well, but I might say we have a group of connections in common. People do that with me. I've done the long shots like all of us. One time I sent a networking request to a C-suite executive at a large Fortune 500 company. And I had almost nothing in common with the person. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm not going to hear back. And oh my gosh. And at the very bottom, I discovered that that person went to Drake University. Well, my daughter went to Drake University. That was all I had. And I put at the bottom, I see you went to Drake University, go Bulldogs in capitals. And literally the person was back to me within a half hour. So when you don't have a personal contact, use what you can. Understand that networking is not 100% game. It's not 100% even if the person's your BFF. You know, they're busy, they don't like to network. We're going for as high a percentage as we possibly can. Someone has asked about going through all of the networks in their primary network, wondering where they might go next. Maybe it's people that you meet through your research and you contact them because they've written something or they have a position in the membership organization that you belong to or aspire to. You could certainly circle back with your first network, thank them again, find a way to be helpful to them, and ask, say, here's where I am in my job search. I'm seeking to move to second tier contacts. If there's anyone in your network that I could be helpful to, I'd love to check in with them for 15 to 20 minutes. But again, the homework allows us to make a deeper connection with the person. And certainly a person-to-person connection often gets us in the door. Anything you can do to augment that. And I think sometimes when it comes to executive networking, we think, oh, I better keep it all professional, not personal. And I have to tell you, it seems that the C-suite very rarely gets the personal touch. If somebody says to me, I used to work for the CEO of 3M, that was the best boss I ever had. Let me tell you, I will immediately send that CEO a message and say, what I heard from someone is the time that you took to stop and compliment them after they made a board presentation brought tears to their eyes, how graciously you did that. That CEO, I can promise you, every single time is back in 15 minutes. They almost never get that kind of human touch. So encourage the human touch. I'm personally connected to adoption. If somebody sees on my list that I've been on various boards that are connected to adopted people, and they say I'm an adopted adult or I'm an adoptive parent, I will meet every single one of those people. You know, so use what you have. Personal, professional, use your judgment as much as you can from as many places as you can. We'll never reach 100%, but we're going for the odds, not perfection. So that's part of our planning. Part of our planning is, who is this person? What might I seek in common with that person? And very, very critically and importantly, what do I wish to learn from that person? A networking meeting is not about getting a job. A networking meeting is not about self-promotion. Those things take care of themselves when networking meetings are about seeking wisdom. I always say, I didn't write this in the book. I'm a very slow thinker. It came to me afterwards. The one thing that you never want to say in a networking meeting is, do you have a job or do you know of a job? Never, ever, ever say that. Nobody has a job in a network. I don't have a job in 99.9% of the networking meetings, and I have a search firm. To ask for, I'd like a job, or could you help me find a job, or I need a job, what jobs do you have, only seeks to make the person squeamish and uncomfortable. If they think during the course of the meeting, now this person's a Sharpie, we may just have a job, they will discuss that with you at that time. I'd like to walk your resume down the hall to the lab and share it with someone else. Would that be okay? Hey, do you have 20 more minutes? I'd like to walk you over to meet our VP of Human Resources. Okay, so your preparation is about, what questions do I want to ask this person uniquely to seek their wisdom? And the vast majority of the 20 minutes of your 20-minute networking meeting are spent in conversation. Somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes of the 20 are you asking questions of that other person. They are questions that you've planned from your homework, from what you've learned, that really specifically, you've got the gift of time with this person and their unique set of expertise. What do you want to know? And I do recommend going in prepared with three to five questions that you have discerned based on that person's background and what you'd like to know. Do not, under any circumstances, ask anything that you could find out about that person easily on the internet. In other words, so how long have you worked here is not an acceptable question. What do you do here at West Communications is not an acceptable question. How's the economy is not an acceptable question. A question like, going back to our previous example, Fiona, I know that you had a long background in finance and administration in higher ed, and you've since translated that experience and moved to the manufacturing sector. I'm interested in tips that you might have for someone like myself who is interested in taking my background in higher education, finance, and administration and moving into another sector, potentially manufacturing. That's specifically what I want to know from Fiona. Chris, I see that you have the CFRE certification. I'm thinking about sitting for that. I've got 15 years in the field, but I've not yet sat for the CFRE. Do you think that that's a helpful credential at this point? So I'm using something specific about that person, and then I'm asking a question to gain their wisdom. Those 3 questions, like I say, form the basis for your discussion. And I suggest you ask and be prepared to ask around 3-ish type of wisdom-seeking questions. You won't ask them every single thing about them, their life and their career, and that's okay. That's not what this is for. There is a 4th and 5th question, and they are imperative. The 4th question, the first 3 are your discussion questions. The 4th question is a question around adding to your network. And someone just asked the question, should I ask a question about who else they think I should talk to? Yes, 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 you should. One person that I checked in with when I was testing the material for the book, a fellow executive search person, said to me, Marcia, I go into every meeting networking, and I have a list of people in the back of my mind that I might want to share with them. But if they don't ask, I won't say. If someone asks for a networking meeting, in the back of my mind, am I thinking, who else I might want to connect them with? Yeah. Always, always, always ask for further connections. Okay. The counterintuitively minimal question to ask. I'll say the worst, but the most minimal question to ask is the most general. Who else do you think I should meet with? Better to ask a specific question. Is there anyone else from the Phi Delta alum group that you think might be a good contact? Is there anyone else from FEI that you're active with that might be a good contact for me right now? Is there anyone else who works in the sector that you might know that might be a good contact for me right now? The more specific does tend to prime the pump. When people say to me, Marcia, is there anyone else at another search firm in the region that might be a good contact? Oh man, you know, I'm ticking through, right? When someone says, Marcia, is there anyone else in the world that you can think of? All of a sudden I'm blank and I can't think of a soul. So do think about specific ways to ask that question. And if you can't, if you're stymied, ask the general question. And do so. This is a you never know question. I've got a fairly large network myself, and yet there are times that I take networking meetings. I had one, you know, within the last month, and it was someone in a very specific branch of the nursing profession, and I don't practice in healthcare, and I, you know, thankfully I'm not very involved in the healthcare sector. Boy, I did not know a contact that could be helpful. However, I suggested certain webinars that I thought were interesting, or a book that might be additive to, you know, something that came up in her networking discussion. So again, we're not seeking, you know, every single meeting the person's going to have a long list. We're always going to ask, and whatever the answer is, even if it's I don't know, we're gracious and we're grateful. We're also going to remember to have a fifth question. And it's a networking mistake not to do so. And the fifth question is, how can I help you in return? It's a must ask. And the baseline question, the least that we're going to do is ask, how can I help you in return? You've been so helpful to me. Cassie, how can I help you in return? And take notes and listen very seriously to what they say. Better if I can have thought ahead of time about how I might help them in return. I just saw this article posted today. I thought you might be interested in it. I'm wondering if it would be helpful for me to post something about your law practice to my network, since you're growing a new practice area. Maybe you've thought a little bit ahead of time about how you might be helpful. Could I see that you're on the planning committee for this event. I'd be very happy to post and promote that opportunity, that event and opportunity to my network. Maybe you've thought about something like that ahead of the meeting. If you have, do that. Again, at the very least, ask if you can be helpful and do sincerely follow up on being helpful. Some people feel like follow-up immediately after the networking meeting is critical. And many people that I spoke with, CEOs and other people who have a lot of networking meetings, feel like follow-up immediately after the meeting is critical. So I strongly suggest that you follow up within 48 hours after your networking meeting. For me, it can be an email. It could be a handwritten note. Could be some other sort of follow-up. And I would say a couple of things. Two things are really, really critical and important. If you've said thank you multiple times, you're already in the top half of all networkers, because trust me, half leave my office and don't say thank you. If you have taken under a half hour, you're now in the top quartile of all networkers, because trust me, people will plop down, sit, talk without an agenda. You know, if you've been specific, if you've sought to gain wisdom, if you've followed these kinds of thoughts, you are now in the top group of networkers. But let me tell you how to make yourself in the top 1% of all networkers. When you follow up with that individual after the fact, do so. The least to do is be generic. Thank you for your time. I know you're busy. That was great. Happy New Year. That's the baseline. How much better if you thank them for something specific? Thank you for sharing with me your one-pager of positive thoughts that have helped you in your quality control jobs over the last 5 years. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing about your own experience in transition. Thank you so much for opening your Rolodex and giving me names of 3 other individuals. I'm very, very grateful, as I understand that sharing one's network is a great gift. So share something specific that stood out for you about the meeting. Do that. And the second thing to always do in your follow-up, in your prompt follow-up, is to circle back with the person who made that connection in the first place. So what that looks like is, if Darren suggested that I call Jackie, let's go back to the very beginning. Darren said, Darren and I are wrapping up a meeting, and he says, yes, I've got one person for you to meet, Jackie. She's outstanding. She was my supervisor in the production area, and it was a really, really terrific workplace. And I think that talking about organizational culture and what you're seeking, she would be a great person to meet. So I connect with Jackie via email. I reference Darren. I reference the kind things that he said about her and her leadership style and her outstanding culture. Jackie agrees to meet with me. So Jackie and I have a great discussion. Actually, let me go back. When Jackie says yes and confirms the meeting, something critical I forgot to mention, I always circle back to Darren. Darren has given me the trust to meet with somebody that he trusts, and I honor that. So I circle back to Darren. Darren, thank you so much again for referring Jackie. We are scheduled to meet in 3 weeks. I can't wait to learn her perspectives. Thanks again. So I hit that. Now 3 weeks go by. I meet with Jackie. We have a really great meeting. Jackie gives me the name of Pat. I'm looking forward to it. But in my thank you to Jackie, once again, I'm so grateful to Darren for the connection. Thank you, thank you. Hit send. And now I emailed Darren. And I thank him again for the referral, how helpful it was. It was outstanding. And Jackie was really, really a trusted advisor to me in our short time together. Probably Jackie said something about Darren. He was a real go-getter when he was on my team. I'm going to share that. So once again, multiple times, I uphold the relationship between the two of them. They look great in front of their peers, colleagues, and contacts. So I always circle back. If I then contact Pat, once again, I'm going to be gracious and grateful with Jackie. I'm going to uphold that relationship. That is going to end. When Darren sees and Jackie sees how I treat them, people are going to be that much more likely to refer others when I see how they've been treated in that same way. So that's very critical. The circle back and the specificity in my gratitude. I think the final mistake when it comes to networking is not making networking what I would call a way of life. And we can all network from a cold start, but it's easier when I'm contacting people that I've stayed in contact with. And it's easier when I've been active on LinkedIn and I'm not scrambling to add 500 contacts because I only have 30. I can network, you know, when I've got facility to talk about what's going on in my field. It's a little harder when I don't. So making networking a way of life, from online activities to group activities to frequent one-on-ones when I don't need a job, is of course helpful to me when I do need a job. Networking also takes place in other arenas, such as large groups or LinkedIn, social media. We can certainly talk about those if you have questions in those areas, but truly statistically, like we started off with, it's the one-on-one meeting and it's the wisdom that we seek in those meetings that leads to the jobs that we obtain as professionals and executives. And you're all outstanding individuals with exceptional credentials who deserve to have the perfect job. The secondary activity that takes place in networking is what you learn about people, what you learn about organizations, what you learn about behind the scenes, what makes leaders and organizations tick. And that behind the scenes information, that wisdom, that guidance leads you to make a better choice in your job. And that has immense value of getting a job. So with that multifaceted view, networking is critical. Doing it well is imperative. And I certainly wish all of you the best in your networking journeys. We have a couple of minutes if there are questions from the group. I see there is a question. There is a question about targeting a company and an industry and networking into that, and then using LinkedIn to look for second connections working in that space. Using folks that are target first connections to get referrals and or foot in the door. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with using LinkedIn as an activity to augment our face-to-face networking. I'm okay using LinkedIn first contacts to get to second contacts who are maybe people who are the folks I might be interviewing or maybe a bit closer to the job I'm seeking. LinkedIn is a bit longer shot type of activity. Realize that many people today have built up rather significant LinkedIn properties and may not have deep relationships with all of their connections. I have maybe 15 or 16,000 links, and I know 1,000 of those people well, right? So I may not be able to comment. If you say, gee, do you know somebody such and so? We may have people that we're linked with that we met briefly 3 years ago. But yes, go ahead, do what you can, be extremely gracious, offer to help in return, post some of the nuggets. Use what you can to bring up any commonalities or connections that we have with that person. Gracious, crisp, thankful, reciprocity, and see what happens. Yeah, I don't mind that as an activity. My book is available on Amazon. Thank you.
Chris, did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, apologies in advance for my throat. I'm a little under the weather, but thank you so much for the presentation. My question is in regards to your recommendation in terms of the number of times that you reach out to someone for a networking meeting. People are busy, and certainly, sometimes things fall between the cracks. But equally, people do get, I think, annoyed when they're contacted too many times, right? So if you don't hear from somebody after say 2 or 3 times of outreach, is it just time to move on to the next contact, do you think? Is there a sweet spot there in terms of the number of times that you want to reach out to somebody with a request?
Yeah, that's a really good point. 2 or 3 is probably about right. And absolutely 100% give the person the benefit of the doubt. Understand it's been busy through the holidays and we've all pivoted to virtual. If you are open, I would still love to have a few minutes of your time in the coming month. Yeah, giving the person the absolute benefit of the doubt. Trust me when I say that yet this week, I'm sure I'll get a message from someone. Well, I usually respond to them right away, one way or the other, but I will get a message where somebody makes almost an accusatory, gee, it's been 3 days and you haven't been back to me and what the heck, and I need to meet you this week. So yeah, and understanding that it could be absolutely anything that's keeping that person from responding, and we'll just put them on our maybe return to in the future list. Someone else has asked a related question around after following up and thanking the person, should we try to create new opportunities to remain in contact with that person? I think the answer is yes, with the caveat that those opportunities are never anything like, I'm still looking for a job. What do you have? I'm still out here. It's been 2 months. I'm still looking. Or sometimes people cover that up a little bit by saying, over the last 2 months, I've made 20 calls, I've applied for 10 jobs, and I've had 5 interviews. But at the end of the day, I'm still looking. I'm still looking. Keep me in mind. What do you got for me? I don't love that. It's maybe a minuscule bit better than dropping off altogether, but you've created already a way to stay in touch with people. you've talked about meaningful topics. And so anytime you see an article about, in Fiona's case, successfully changing sector, you might send that to her and say, I thought of you because you demonstrated this so beautifully. Anytime I see something about Darren, who referred me to, I can't remember who's referring who in my example, but at any rate, Darren refers me to Pat. Anytime I hear something about Darren in the community, I can circle back with him. Darren, I heard that you just received a promotion. Congratulations. It was sure a pleasure meeting with you. Maybe I ran into Pat and Pat made a new comment about Darren. Hey, did you hear that Darren just added a new function to his responsibilities? I'm going to send a note to Darren. Hey, I just connected with Pat. And we were talking about your outstanding work and the fact that you've now got R&D reporting up to you. Congrats. So because your network is really active and you're pulling in information from all sorts of sources, you've got natural ways to uphold that other person in a way that's meaningful and appropriate. At this time, I will turn it back to Laura and Bill to wrap things up and make an announcement about next month's session. Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Marcia. That was great. If anybody has any questions about the presentation, we'll be posting everything into the Mighty Network. So a recording will be there. You can re-listen to it. I showed on the screen we've got coming up for the month of January. Next week, we've got Ron Elsden from California who'll be talking on guiding your C-suite career. And Fiona will take care of it. Make sure you get everything you need to join us. And again, thank you very much, Marcia. Really appreciate your time and expertise. And as she mentioned in the chat, her books are available on Amazon. So thank you, everybody. Have a great week. And we'll see you next week.